what will be. I do think a lot about what I can do that will be useful, but like, who do I want to spend my time with? What do I want to spend my time doing?
Like a fish in water, just going around with the current.
Yeah, that's certainly what it feels like. I mean, I think that's what most people would say if they were really honest about it.
Yeah, if they really think, yeah. And some of that then gets to the Sam Harris discussion of free will being an illusion. Of course, it very well might be, which is a really complicated thing to wrap your head around. What do you think is the meaning of this whole thing? That's a question you could ask an AGI. What's the meaning of life? As far as you look at it, you're part of a small group of people that are creating something truly special. Something that almost feels like humanity was always moving towards.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is I don't think it's a small group of people. I think this is like the product of the culmination of whatever you want to call it, an amazing amount of human effort. And if you think about everything that had to come together for this to happen, when those people discovered the transistor in the 40s, like, is this what they were planning on? All of the work, the hundreds of thousands, millions of people, whatever it's been, that it took to go from that one first transistor to packing the numbers we do into a chip and figuring out how to wire them all together, and everything else that goes into this, the energy required, the science, like just every step. It's just the output of like all of us. I think that's pretty cool.
And before the transistor, there was 100 billion people who lived and died, had sex, fell in love, ate a lot of good food, murdered each other sometimes, rarely, but mostly just good to each other, struggled to survive. And before that, there was bacteria, and eukaryotes, and all of that.
And all of that was on this one exponential curve.
Yeah, how many others are there? I wonder. We will ask. That is question number one for me for AGI. How many others? And I'm not sure which answer I want to hear. Sam, you're an incredible person. It's an honor to talk to you. Thank you for the work you're doing. Like I said, I've talked to Ilias, I've talked to Greg, I've talked to so many people at OpenAI. They're really good people. They do really interesting work.
We are going to try our hardest to get to a good place here. I think the challenges are tough. I understand that not everyone agrees with our approach of iterative deployment and also iterative discovery, but it's what we believe in. I think we're making good progress, and I think the pace is fast, but so is the progress. So like the pace of capabilities and change is fast, but I think that also means we will have new tools to figure out alignment and sort of the capital S safety problem.
I feel like we're in this together. I can't wait what we together as a human civilization come up with.
It's going to be great, I think. We'll work really hard to make sure.
Thanks for listening to this conversation with Sam Altman. To support this podcast, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, let me leave you with some words from Alan Turing in 1951. It seems probable that once the machine thinking method has started, it would not take long to outstrip our feeble powers. At some stage, therefore, we should have to expect the machines to take control. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you next time.
What you need is, if you want to replace the elite that you have today, what you need to do is you need to have a better elite. Right? There's just the only one way out if you don't like the current oligarchic elite. That doesn't result in just mass death. The only way out is a superior elite. Okay, what would be a superior elite to the elite that we have today? Well, a bunch of things. So one is they would presumably have a set of ideas that would be better ideas, because that would presumably be the whole point of doing this. They would then need a story that is a superior story, right? So sometimes called a political myth, right? Which is they would need a moral claim, right, that was able to legitimate their rule. They would need faction status prestige. If you belong to our elite, you are a higher status, higher prestige person than you belong to that elite, right?
Let's fix this.
And then they would need to build the kind of all of these other things: the perpetuation method, the recruitment method, they would need funding, right? They would need an education system, like they would need media organs, right? They would need the ability to get their message out. For people who want to change the system like that is the way to do it. Now, it's been done before, and it could be done again.
Oh, so this works. Okay, so what are we trying to do? We have the wrong arguments.
I'm Eric Thornburg, and this is Upstream with Eric Thornburg.
I'm just going to do this.
Welcome to the first episode of Upstream. Today's guest
Alright,
is Mark
so
Andreessen.
that works.
The story of Mark's entrepreneurial investor journey has been told in many podcasts. So in this podcast, we explore Mark's political and intellectual journey, his education. In the mid-2010s, everything started to change. So Mark re-examined his understanding of how the world works through reading the history of the left and the right. In this episode, we talked about what changed in the 2010s, what Mark learned from reading the history of the left and the right, and what that means for where everything is going. We talk about how our modern elites function, how and why they all have the same opinions, and advice for counter-elites looking to replace them. This was recorded a couple months ago when SBF and the Elon Twitter file saga were at their peak. But the content is timeless. You could replace SBF with AI doomers, and it would sound like it just came out. Without further ado, here's Mark. Mark, welcome to the show. Thanks for being the first guest.
Hey, awesome. Hey, Eric. Great to be here.
Great. You recently tweeted about how 2015 shook your concept of how the world works. And you tweeted about a reading journey that you went on to understand what had changed. We're going to get into some of those books that you read. First, I want to summarize so that the audience understands what exactly changed. Is a fair summary something like that? Some of our major institutions, whether it's schools, media, government institutions, Fortune 500, kind of all went hard left in unison. And kind of indoctrinating the new morality and censoring people who disagree. Is that a fair summary, or what would be your edit or summary of what really changed? Because it's before Trump, right? What really changed in 2015?
Yeah, so the hardest thing with this kind of question always is, right, how much does the world change versus how much do you change, right? And so you always kind of wonder, it's like, okay, if I were the person I was today and I relived, maybe again, or 1996 again, or 2008 again, or whatever, would I have a totally different view on things? And I think that's that's an individual question. It's also a very interesting societal question, right? Because we live in a specific kind of media environment today.
This is fine.
I often wonder, like, what would it have been like to live through the Bay of Pigs, through the Cuban Missile Crisis, right, or Iran Contra, or the FDR administration, or whatever, or World War II. Imagine living through World War II with modern social media, right? And the level of second guessing that would have taken place, every step of the way, right? Would the United States have ever entered World War II in an era of social media? Like, if you read the history of World War II, a very large percentage of the country was opposed to entering World War II. And up through the late 30s, and basically up until Pearl Harbor, and would we have ever gotten involved? I don't know. And so anyway, so it's really hard to, kind of reconstruct, I think, these things historically. My lived experience, as the kids say, is that, things started changing pretty dramatically from at least the way I understood how the world worked, probably in 2012. Just a lot of people in authority started saying things that just didn't make any sense to me. People started acting in ways that I didn't think were, that I certainly didn't predict and didn't think would happen. And then, look, I think that, I lived the same sequence of events as everybody else, but I think Trump winning I think there have been basically four big events. It's like Trump winning the nomination in 2015, and then winning the general election in 2016, and then there was Charlottesville, and then there was the George Floyd moment, and then there was January 6th. There's 3, 4, 5, 6 things in there. They kind of caused, I think, both sides of the political spectrum, both halves of the American population to really start to act in really fundamentally different ways than at least I was used to. And so anyway, I lost all faith in my own ability to understand what was going on. And just realized that basically all of my assumptions around how people behave, at least in politics and current events and social dynamics, basically are just wrong.
Here we go.
And so when people react to that sort of soul shattering moment in different ways, I suppose. My approach to deal with it is to try to then kind of go back and kind of trace the ideas back and try to figure out kind of where I went wrong. And that led me on this journey that you're referring to. That basically, the way I do that is I basically read my way back, and I sort of read my way back in time to try to figure out when things actually started. And then that led me to kind of do that. So there's a big historical kind of aspect to that. And then it also caused me to kind of, I basically decided that I didn't understand either the left or the right. Like I didn't understand how Democrats were acting. I didn't understand how Republicans were acting. And so I decided to kind of read my way out in both directions, both all the way out to the left, all the way to like Lenin and Marxist communism on the one hand, and then all the way out to the right on the other hand, and see if I could at least reconstruct a worldview for at least some sense of context of what's happening today.
I heard there was this kind of critique of the left, which is, hey, you can read your way back, but actually it's really just excuses for people who want stuff. And we have this debate with Richard Hanania about hey, how much do ideas matter versus just groups of people and tribalism, and of course the left and right changes their ideas over time too. What's your reaction and take on that?
Yeah, so the cynical, well, got a couple kind of things in there. So, yeah, so there's a big overall kind of question of sort of theory of mind, right? Which is how well does the right ever understand the left? How well does the left ever understand the right? There is some evidence, if you like read political science, there's some evidence that people on the right tend to understand people on the left better than vice versa. And the theory there basically is like a lot of right people used to be left-wing people. Yeah, right. People tend to move right as they go through their lives, and so you maybe have a memory. Like a lot of neoconservatives are former Marxists as an example, and so they've actually fully understood Marxism inside out. We'll talk about James Burnham, who's like a classic example of this, who actually was a very active Marxist in the 20s and 30s, communist. So anyway, there's always kind of that question. The question of whether ideas matter. This is one of the things I've been trying to kind of figure out and understand, which is like you've got it's kind of a lot of the happening around Trump, which is you've kind of got two things that kind of seem to run in parallel and seem to kind of affect each other, but it's not clear which is the dog and which is the tail. So one is like these sort of big mass movements of basically broad-based popular opinion. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but like with broad-based popular opinion moves, it's usually not the result of some sort of detailed intellectual argument. Right, it's not that you have 300 million people who read a journal article, an academic journal article, and then decide to change your mind on things. Like it's basically like it's an emotional surge, right, of some form. It's a primal thing. It's not particularly logical or rational, but it's very deeply felt and very deeply believed, and by the way, maybe very real. And then there's this second channel, which is like the intellectuals, right? And sort of then there's like the intellectual superstructure on top of the movement. And for communism, that was obviously Marx and then Lenin, all of their writings. And then there's corresponding stuff on the right where people have written very important books over time. And then there's this question like, okay, is it like the intellectual elite basically driving popular change because basically the population is responding to ideas? Or is it the other way around? It's like, no, the people moved, and then intellectuals are like, well, the people are moving. I am their leader. I must therefore get ahead of them. I must basically, articulate a story as to why they're moving. So people, down the road will think that it was I who caused it. Eric Hoffer talks about this. So Eric Hoffer, the sociologist in his book, The True Believer, he talks a lot about this. So the True Believer is about the sort of mass movement of crowds. And so Hoffer's argument is an interesting one. Hoffer argues that basically the driver is mass popular sentiment. The mass popular sentiment moves kind of into being in and of itself, and he uses the term the true believer to kind of refer to somebody who's part of a crowd, part of a mob.
I don't understand why
part of a mass movement. On either side, by the way, this is true communism, true fascism, and so forth. So it's not a political observation; it's a psychological observation. And then what Hoffer says is basically whenever there's a big surge in popular movement, there's always sort of the evolution or development of a set of intellectual ideas on top of that basically serve to describe what's happened and sort of rationalize it and try to put it into an intellectual framework. And he said the reason you get those ideas, the reason that happens is because the movement needs to recruit the intellectuals. And so to recruit the intellectuals, you need to have ideas. And so you've got this like thin layer of intellectual content on the top that sort of recruits the intellectuals to the movement. And then you've got the demagoguery and kind of the mass movement and sort of non-rational and more emotional. Maybe that's the case. I think Richard, if he were here, would probably agree with us. Richard's general take, as I understand it, is that basically people respond to interests more than ideas. And so if people in the crowd think that they're going to be better off as a result of action X, or if their enemies are going to suffer because of action X, that's a direct incentive to respond to that. And the ideas are kind of these abstractions and intellectuals just kind of fix your tails on.
Insert object.
You know, maybe that's the best explanation.
Hillary.
Having said that, look, like Marx, wrote,
That is so far.
Marx wrote these things, right? I mean, Marx wrote, Does God Evolve, the Communist Manifesto, and so forth, and he wrote those 150 years ago, and China still uses it today, right? And Xi Jinping still talks about it all the time, and so, Xi Jinping presumably at this stage wouldn't have to talk about that stuff if it wasn't important, and yet he does. Boy, it certainly Marx had a big impact on the world. And by the way, those same materials are taught in, university colleges and universities today, and they're, you would seem like they're having a pretty big impact on the world. And so, that's a pretty strong argument that they're a driver. So, probably somewhere in the middle.
Totally. Yeah, oppressor and oppressed language still lives on today for sure. So you read a few dozen books about understanding the left, understanding the right. What sort of mental model on either side kind of filled in the gap or helped you get a better sense for either what's happened or what's likely to happen in either movement?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I'm hardly an expert on this, but I'll just kind of give my common sense, and maybe some people down the road they can think about it for themselves. So I think the sort of if you go far back enough in history, basically if you go far back enough in history, basically everybody was like super right-wing compared to today. And I used to joke that, it's just sort of like different things. If you go back 2,500 years, everybody was super right-wing compared to today, to the Greeks. If you go back to the Romans, if you go back to, the Florence in the 1500s, it was like super right-wing. By the way, if you go back to 2015, it was super right-wing as compared to today. And in fact, there are things that 2 weeks ago, which I said is super right-wing. And so, generally speaking, everything in the past was much more further to the right than it is today. Basically, why is that? Why is that is because sort of the long run kind of foundation of human civilization has been hierarchy and order. If you go back to sort of any previous, society, they all have some conception of natural order. They all have some conception of, rulers and rule. They have some conception of, aristocracy and proletariat or so forth. And hierarchy and order are sort of inherently right-wing ideas. If you believe that, then basically the left is a reaction to the right, right? So the left, the sort of right is the original thing, and then the left sort of emerged over time in reaction to it, and starting with call it Judaism and Christianity, and then sort of flowing forward into kind of liberal democracy, and then ultimately socialism and communism. There's sort of all these sort of left-wing movements over the last 2,000 years have been sort of critique, and it's a critique of the right, and it's a critique of hierarchy, it's a critique of unfairness. Right, it's a critique of, some people have more than other people, some people have more power than other people, some people have more money than other people, and there is an unfairness to that. There's some altruism instinct in the human spirit that doesn't like that. And so as a consequence, the left basically says the existing order, the existing hierarchy is unfair, and so therefore we are going to tear it down and replace it with something that's more egalitarian. Something that has more fair outcomes. Christianity did that from a morality standpoint. So socialism basically attempted to do that from an economic standpoint, and we kind of live in the shadow, maybe of those two great movements.
SecureFrame is the leading all-in-one platform for security and privacy compliance. Get SOC 2 audit ready in weeks, not months. I believe in SecureFrame so much that I invested in it, and I recommend it to all my portfolio. Sign up for a free demo and mention Upstream during your demo to get 20% off your first year. Now, more than ever, startup founders need a safe place to put their cash. Mercury protects your money and also provides the streamlined user experience that great founders expect. Through partner banks and their sweep networks, Mercury offers up to $5 million in FDIC insurance, which is 20 times the per bank limit. They also make it easy to invest any cash above the FDIC insured amount in a money market fund. 100,000 startups trust Mercury with their finances. I've been a happy Mercury customer and have found their team incredibly helpful and responsive. They even got an important wire out mandatory on Christmas Eve. After all, your Christmas is my opportunity. Visit Mercury.com to get started. Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Choice Financial Group, all banking trusts, members of FDIC.
Before proceeding with further
Marketer Hire is one of my favorite resources for startups looking to hire marketers. With thousands of pre-vetted marketers across a dozen roles, Marketer Hire matches you to your perfect marketer in 48 hours. Whether you need help with growth marketing, SEO, lifecycle, content, or any other aspect of your marketing strategy, Marketer Hire has you covered. So if you're a founder looking for top-notch marketing talent to help grow your startup, head over to marketerhire.com to find your perfect match. Sign up with a promo code Upstream. You'll get $1,000 credit on your first hire.
Fair.
And there's a certain kind of person who says, hey, yes, this movement, starting 2015, let's say it's gone too far, but it has good intentions, and there's been some good things that have come from it, and it's an important kind of it's an important direction, and history has a direction, and you want to be on the right side of history. Is what is the counter to that hey, good intentions have led to some horrible things, or that it doesn't even help the people it aims to help, like, because that's a very common position. Let's say even in tech, right?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of things. So one is like the good intent. There's a cliche for a reason, which is the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And so and this again is like a reading of history thing. Like if you read accounts of like even really horrible people in history, like I think they thought they were doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. Another cliche that I'll use a lot is everybody's the hero of their own story. And so like I have a worldview, and psychologists will tell you this. Like everybody's really good at manufacturing an internal narrative for why they're the good guy and everybody else is the bad guy. And so I have an internal narrative that says I'm doing the right thing for my people. I'm doing the right thing for all of humanity, right? I mean, you see it playing out today in the sort of FTX thing. Like I examine doing the right thing for the future of humanity, right? Like it's the thing. Like the horrible people who they thought they were doing the right thing. Like in their framework of morality, as inside their head as they understood it, their motivating force, their feeling, I think more often than not was they were doing the right thing. So clearly it's not enough, right, for somebody to feel that way. Then there's the unintended side effects, kind of aspect to it, which is, it's really hard to establish cause and effect. I am going to change society in the following ways. It is going to generate deterministically the good outcomes that I hope for, and it is not going to demonstrate the unintentional, bad consequences that I would have been horrified about had I found out about them ahead of time. And just in general, like a big problem with social engineering broadly. Is that it's very easy to both, kind of blow it on the positive side and then also have a lot of negative consequences, and history is full of those. Look, and then maybe I take your big question all the way back. So, like, the picture that Nietzsche tells, the story that Nietzsche tells, I think is pretty good on this. So the term Nietzsche uses for what we're talking about is sort of Nietzsche says there are two kinds of morality. Fundamentally, there's sort of natural morality and slave morality. And when he says that, he doesn't mean, there's a form of that. It's like literally morality of the masters, morality of the slaves. But he actually means, when he uses those terms, he actually means the concept more broadly. He means the morality of the masters as taken by people who aren't even literal slave masters, but like people generally who have sort of inherited the morality of the master, even if they don't literally have slaves. And then similarly, he says slave morality and the morality of the slave carried forward by people who are no longer slaves.
Okay, so this could be.
So he says, like, the original form of order, and this is true, right? The original form of social order was masters and slaves. Like that is kind of how everything was structured. You go back 4,000 years, that's how everything worked. And so like that sort of set the sort of fundamental world battle in place. Master morality is very unnatural for those of us in a Christian, Judeo-Christian world, because Judeo-Christian world, according to Nietzsche, is the world of slave morality. Nietzsche asks us, to sort of imagine if we lived in the, pre-Christian times. We lived in a much more difficult world in which, basic survival was at stake, basically every day. What he basically says is in the pre-Christian world, morality basically was strong equals good. And so if you were strong, if you were in charge, if you won, right, if you were the victor, that was good. And if you were weak, if you were the slave, if you lost, right, if your people got destroyed, that was bad. And so that's the master morality framework. We moderns don't accept that. We have a totally different view, right? Which Nietzsche refers to as slave morality, which is basically no. Most people in life are not masters. Most people, if it's a choice between master and slave, most people are slaves. Historically, most people were slaves. And actually, the majority of people are slaves. They're abused by the masters, and we should be on the side of the slaves. And that, that is basically the Judeo-Christian ethic. We should be on the side of the weak, the downtrodden, the disadvantaged, right? The marginalized, right? You hear these exact same concepts, playing out today.
This is weird.
Look, if you object to living in the world that we live in, and you're like, wow, I wish I could go back to the Roman Empire, or go back to the Greek Empire, or go back to the Egyptians or whatever, it's like, well, boy, like life really sucked for most people then too, right? Like that was, you definitely did not want to be a slave in Roman times, like that was bad. And so it's hard to kind of say, like, go all the way back to Roman times. At the same time, you do have to ask the question of like, okay, do you want to live in a world of like pure slave morality? Do you want to reach the point where basically all you're venerating is weakness, right? Where basically all you're doing is basically trying to achieve, full equality of outcome, full egalitarianism, and you're trying to basically rank the weak all the way up the totem pole and rank the strong all the way down the other end. And, historically that's where communism goes wrong, right? That communism is sort of slave morality fully realized as a system. And of course that leads to catastrophe. And so I think you kind of want to say, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. You probably want some blend. You probably want basically on the one hand, respect for like merit and sort of, achievement and success on the one hand, but you also want like some sense of fairness and sharing. On the other hand, maybe the right way to have like a society is to kind of balance those two. Do they balance? Are they like in thermostatic equilibrium, and do they kind of swing back and forth, but they kind of come around as some sort of middle ground? Or do they go pathological? And a society that tries to reclaim national morality ends up being the Nazis, and a society that goes all the way to slave morality ends up being the Soviet Union. And they aren't actually thermostatic, and you actually have to make a choice at the end of the day, which one is worse, and you have to steer society in the other direction. And I don't know the answer. I think the question is a very live question because there are a lot of forces at work, at least in the West right now, that want to push us much harder in the direction of slave morality. And like I said, we've like generally that experiment ends poorly. We seem determined to repeat it.
This is the problem.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, if we're trying to reconcile the two, it seems that we have strong brake pedals or strong immunity on the master morality side, ability to hold back strong men, our ability to, take care of them. Whereas we have less immunity on people kind of, being manipulative on the slave morality side to get what they want, because we do care about compassion and kindness, specific good intentions so much. And, you mentioned it's a live question. I mean, earlier today, Elon just tweeted that, wokeness is a mind virus, and it's the most important problem. And obviously, we can't speak real on it. If I was to parse that or steelman that, I would say it's almost this meta problem by which you can't solve other problems. If you have kind of excess slave morality, making our institutions dysfunctional, making us turn on each other, et cetera.
Yeah, it's like, can you ever be too fair, right? Can you ever be too fair? Can you ever be too nice? Can you ever be too nice, to the downtrodden? Can you ever be, too determined to address injustice? Like, is that possible? And a lot of people say, no, you can't. You can always do more. You can always be more fair. You can always, have more equality. Again, that was the story of the communists. Like, that was the proposition of communism in the economic realm. And, we saw how that ended. I just, by the way, I just asked, running experiments at ChatGPT, the OpenAI thing, the chatbot, and it actually gives a pretty fair description. You ask it about fascism, and it actually does kind of a really good description of fascism, and kind of notes that it doesn't end well. And then you ask it to describe communism, and it does this very interesting thing where it describes communism, and then it says, now in fairness, communism has been implemented to varying levels of success.
Let's see if that actually exists. Holy crap, it exists.
Okay. And of course, what that's reflecting is nobody at OpenAI decided that would be the answer. I don't think. What happened was OpenAI is trained on the corpus of proliferating human knowledge, and generally speaking, a lot of people who written about politics for the last 100 years have been a little bit some of communism. And that kind of reflects its way through the training data. So I look, the book that had the biggest impact, you mentioned the Elon thing, I'd abstract that out a little bit. The book that has the biggest impact for this question on me is this question of can you have sort of the slave morality, sort of a morality of compassion, let's say a morality of compassion and regressing injustice and achieving equality, like with, sort of egalitarianism and ethic. Whether it's religious in the form of Christianity, or whether it's economic in the form of, what's called progressivism. Does that always become pathological? So, the strong argument that becomes pathological is James Burnham, who we'll talk about probably a fair amount. But James Burnham wrote three, I think really important book books. The third book he wrote, which has a very aggressive title called Suicide of the West, which kind of gives away his answer, is basically a full undressing of what we call liberalism and progressivism.
Okay, so neither of these things actually
exist. Synonyms.
So let's get source buffer.
And he makes a strong argument. He wrote this book in 1964. He wrote the book having been such a committed communist in the 20s and 30s that he actually was a personal friend of Leon Trotsky and worked with Trotsky for years and argued with Trotsky at great length for a very long time. So he's the guy who definitely used left communism and socialism really well.
This is hallucination.
And he wrote this book in 64 when he was the chair of the NYU philosophy department, which is basically inconceivable that a character like this would be in a position like that anymore. But he was, of course, he wrote the book in 64, which is like right before the big social upheavals of the 1960s that resulted in the world we live in today. And what he basically said in the book was he said actually sort of the left has a fatal flaw. Exactly to your point. The fatal flaw is there's no governor, right? There's no limiter
okay, so this
on
is
how
just
much capacity you can
too
have.
far
There's no
down.
limiter to how
So
much
I'm
if
just
you
going
try to
to
achieve equality.
simplify
There's
this
no limiter to how much you can try to overthrow
That
hierarchy
doesn't
in order
matter.
and get to full egalitarianism. So he basically says in the book, as a consequence, liberalism will always become progressivism. Progressivism will always become socialism. Socialism will always become communism, and you will always end up, basically, in pursuit of utopia, you will always create hell on earth.
Just do that, right?
The 20th century, there's, I don't know what it was, like 80 societies or whatever, the course of the 20th century tried different versions of communism and kind of all got the same result. Notwithstanding OpenAI, or ChatGPT. The counter-argument, the steelman counter-argument would be, the most European economies today and the American, system are, they're left-wing in a lot of ways, from a historical standpoint, but, they're hardly, we're not effective Soviet Union, it's not full communism.
I'm gonna try this again.
And so, at least over the last, since you've read the book, that hasn't literally played out.
Arguments. Fair enough.
There are people in national office who, definitely seem to have that vision. So, I'd say the jury's still out.
If Mark Weinstein or Sam Harris or Yasha Monk were here, they would say, hey, no, post-World War II, we had this golden era of liberalism where we were able to keep things in check. And we just need to get back to that. And if Peter Stewart were here, he would say that's like, the communists saying, real liberalism, real communism has never been tried. And it's a pipe dream. Is that time period an anomaly, or how do we make sense of it? Why is going back a pipe dream?
Well, I think any modern leftists would say that was also the era of peak, racism, sexism, homophobia, right? That was the Mad Men era, right? And so that was the era in which, basically white men were running around doing what they wanted, and, women were oppressed, and people were oppressed, and black people were oppressed, and, all these things. So, I always find it interesting whenever anybody on the left argues back to the 1960s, because that does not seem to be a prevailing view on the left.
All right, how do we split?
Then there's the economic explanation of the sort of American kind of, ascendance, second half of the 20th century. And I think the economic explanation is very simple, which is, World War II, every other industrialized society on the face of the planet was bombed and rubbled, right? In World War II, either, because they, started a war that they shouldn't have, like the Germans, or because they, were on the receiving end of it, like the Brits, and the French. And the Japanese as well, and so, these societies got, Germany just got, very nearly, physically obliterated. Japan,
Here we go.
not only did we set up nukes in Japan, like we firebombed all the cities and burned them to the ground, right? So, there really was very little, industrial capacity in the West, as of, circa 1945. Now, Germany and Japan and other countries rebuilt and started doing, really well again in the 1970s, 1980s, but, it was like a 30, 40-year journey to get those countries really back up on their feet as modern industrial economies. And so the U.S., we had trade in tech or trade in never use the word monopoly, but, instead we just say robust market share. We had the U.S. had a robust market share of global manufacturing. I think in large part because there just were not alternatives at the time. And so, we had very high rates of economic growth during that period. We had very high rates of productivity growth. Growth covers up a lot of sins. Maybe we got away with a lot of dysfunction because we were just growing so fast economically.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Nobody really, you mentioned a handful of people who might pine for the 50s and 60s. Almost nobody does, right? They either pine for the 30s, right? They want to go back to the full New Deal, right? Or
And you have to
they,
figure out
pined for an
point
even
this
earlier era.
closer
People on
to.
the right, sometimes pined for an earlier era of free enterprise, right? Like the heyday of free enterprise in America was probably probably something like 1870 to 29, probably. So 1870s, 1880s through the 1920s. It was what's called the second industrial revolution. So it was the sort of incredibly transformative time in technology with the creation of everything, the electric power and all modern communication networks, telegraph, telephone, radio, television, automobiles, airplanes, right? And so it was this incredibly fertile time in terms of technological development. And then it was pre-New Deal, which means the national economic system was much more laissez-faire. And this is sort of the fully realized kind of heyday of classical liberalism, kind of in its full glory. Free market, like libertarians would like to go back to that era. Most modern Americans, would not.
Maybe Joshua would maybe want to go back to the 90s or something. We're having a lot of social progress, but there's still free speech is popular, and there's a question as to whether you can take the good without the excess.
Well, no, there's the other kicker on that exact kind of argument, which is but the 90s got you. The 90s got you everything that followed the 90s, right? Like, so if everything was so great in the 90s, why did everything go so wrong in the 2000s, 2010s, right? It's the same point. So why do we go further back? If everything was so great in the 50s and 60s, why did we get the 70s and 80s? Right. And so apparently, like these prior, look, the glory of America is its dynamism, right? We change as a society, culture, like way more than most. And so that's the strength. But every preceding historical period apparently was on very shaky footing because it didn't last very long. Right. And in fact, it was not very long until there were lots and lots of people who thought it actually, in retrospect, whatever happened 20 years earlier was like very deeply evil. And so, whatever preconditions, whatever conditions created whatever golden age you want to hold out there, they didn't last. Right. And in fact, they presumably sparked reactions and changes that led to the worst environment we're in today. So, I think it's hard to find stable ground. And so, because it's hard to find stable ground, it's also hard to have that much faith in the sort of so-called thermostatic model. It's hard to have, because what a lot of people will say is, it's fine and good. There's just constant arguments and right, left, and this and that, and interventionist and isolationist, and there's all these kinds of poles, right? Nationalist and globalist and so forth. There's all these kind of different axes of politics and social change, merit / equality of opportunity for small outcome and so forth. So you kind of imagine like a graph that has all these different axes, and then basically the pendulum kind of swings all around the graph and always comes back to the center somehow. It's like, well, maybe, right? Or maybe what we're just talking about is like, massive survivorship bias, right? 100 other societies in the last 200 years, like went badly off track in horrible ways, right? We're the one that didn't. Right, the dice came up in the right order for us. Congratulations, great. We wound through roulette table 30 times in a row. The 31st spin of the dial's coming up. Like, or it's it seems to them. It's like, it's the guy who drowns in the, how do you drown in a lake that is on average 4 feet deep, right? Well, it's because if most of the lake is 3.95 feet deep, and then there's one part that's 100 feet deep, and you get stuck in that part, you're in trouble, right? And so. Maybe we're always about to wander into that trench and fall out of view and die.
Can I ask for input
I
later?
think it's a really big important question. Like it's I think people can get too blasé about where things go. It's like I don't. And again, the sweep of history, right? It's just like there are so many societies that thought they had things figured out and then everything went horribly wrong. I think it's hard to just assume that everything will be okay just because it has been so far.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do the
You mentioned Burnham. Let's get into Burnham. You mentioned The Suicide of the West. Let's talk about another book, The Managerial Revolution, because it's related, to what's happening right now. There's been this kind of, underground idea for a while. I think Eric Weinstein calls it the gated institutions complex or something like that. That some people call it the cathedral. This idea that the government, academia, media. Some corporations work together in kind of in a decentralized way to achieve a certain political goal. How do we make sense of it?
Yeah, so Burnham has a couple, 2 books that deal directly on this that provide at least an explanation that's made a lot of sense to me. Like the thing with these books, like I feel like I understand like this is example you're talking about, like kind of why they play out the way that they do, and see if this resonates with people. So the first book is called The Managerial Revolution, and it was written in the early 40s. It was written like in 1940, and it's actually interesting because it was written couple things historically about it. So one is it was written shortly after Burnham had been a national communist, and so he was trying to actually still work his way to communism at that point. It was also written at the height of World War II, and it was actually written when it actually wasn't clear who was
Senior
going to win.
programmer.
And so there's a bunch of sections in the book that are like, well, you know, if America wins X, and if Germany wins, you know, boy, you know,
All
they're
right,
totally different set of
perfect.
things.
So what did we get?
So
Try
it's a
to write
good,
a
it's a good kind
couple
of
of
recreation of
messages,
what it must have
insert
been like.
no.
The answer
This
to that
is
actually was not clear.
work.
But so his thesis in the book basically is as follows, which basically, basically what he says is, look,
Interesting enough.
world systems like governments and industries and
Which
human affairs,
means
you know,
we're
basically
at
up through the
404.
19th century were basically small scale. And by my understanding, they were small scale. It's just
And
like,
that's
you know,
because we
population
tried
levels
to
were
do
low, states were small,
gpt-3.5-turbo.
and, you know, businesses
Probably
were
doesn't have
small.
completion
Even if you had like a
software.
car company or whatever, like it just wasn't that big, right? With Henry Ford had Ford Motor Company, like they just didn't make that many cars. There weren't that many people who could afford cars.
Okay, that's a good
And
one.
so you
Because
sort of had
is
this world of, you know, preceding forms of social order, which is like monarchies
Where's
or
the
aristocracies
API
or
reference?
bourgeois, you know, capitalism, free market capitalism or whatever. You know, where basically there was always like a principal in charge, right? So like the king is in charge, or like the, you know, Henry Ford, the owner of the company is in charge. Like, you know, the idea of like a business is a sole proprietorship. Like, you know, the owner of the corner store owns the corner store, the owner of the car company owns the car company. Runs the car
That's
company.
kind of cool.
So sort of basically in all of human history, you like had basically people in charge. Philip would say like people with skin in the game, like people who had like direct like responsibility, authority, and accountability,
All right,
kind of
so
all
we're
wrapped
just
into
gonna
one.
change.
And what Burnham says basically is in the 20th century, as a result actually of the Second Industrial Revolution, basically the 20th century is a century of scale. And so all of a sudden the countries get really big, the populations get really big, the companies get really big, the industries get really big, the technologies get really complicated, right? He wrote right at the beginning of computerization, which of course is going to accelerate all these trends. And what he said basically is like the era of just a Henry Ford running his car company is basically over. And he said instead what happens is all big companies are going to get run not by the owner of the company, but by a professional class of managers. And you know, the literal form of that is literally people who have gone to like, you know, management school and gotten like MBAs, or more broadly in his definition, it's basically people with advanced technical skills, you know, sort of technical managerial skills. People who are administrators who are capable of running large institutions. And so he says basically all the companies are going to get run by these managers. All governments are going to get run by managers. And you know, this was the heyday. He saw this happening because this was the heyday of the New Deal. You know, FDR enormously expanded the scope of the federal government, right, for better or for worse, and then brought in this new class of persons to kind of run the federal government, which were Burnham's managers. And then Burnham said, look, you've got like, you know, World War II is this like three-way fight basically between, you know, the three big political systems of the 20th century, which basically is like fascism, you know, in the form of Germany and Italy and Japan, you know, communism in the form of the Soviet Union, which was our ally, even though Stalin was actually kind of a bad guy, and then liberal democracy, right, which is sort of its full flowering and sort of the progressive form under FDR. And he said basically those three systems obviously have big differences, but they have one big thing in common: they're all managerial in nature, right? The communists, the Soviet central planners are going to run the entire country from Moscow. You know, Nazi central planners are going to run, you know, the entire country, the entire economy, you know, from Berlin, and then the U.S., you know, FDR is going to run America. Right, with his managers, but the kicker he put in is he said, look, this is not either, you know, you can say it's good or bad. It doesn't even matter if it's good or bad. He says it's necessary. He says the reality is all these systems are too big to be run by, you know, the older model of, you know, the Henry Ford, the owner or whatever. These systems are all gigantic. Like they are all gigantic. Like all countries from here on out are going to be huge. All industries are going to be complicated. All businesses are going to be complicated. And so it's going to be a world of managers from here on out. And then he basically identifies what, you know, today we would call the principal agent problem, right? Which is basically what this means is, and you see this with companies, right? Which is basically if the owner of the company is not running the company, right, then there's a separation of ownership and control, right? A separation of ownership and management. And then you're going to have basically the creation of what you call the managerial class, which will be the people who are basically going to be actually running the company. And then as a consequence of this, you know, ownership will tend to then get dispersed, right? And ownership will become very weak. And that's what's happening. I think of any public company today, right? How many owners are there? You know, take any of these companies, take General Motors. How many owners of General Motors are there? There are millions of owners of General Motors because there are millions of people who own General Motors stock. How many managers are there at General Motors? There's, you know, the top 10 executives that run the, you know, there's a CEO, the top 10 executives, the top 200 managers in the company run the company. Like, who's more in charge of General Motors, right? The owners or the managers? And the answer is clearly the managers. By the way, same thing politically, right? Who runs the United States, right? Who runs the United States government? Is it the voters or is it, Congress and the White House? It's, the voters are dispersed. There's, whatever, 300 million of us were dispersed. We individually, none of us have any basically influence or control at all. And so, the handful of people who are our representatives basically, run everything. And, this leads to this, incredibly weird result where Congress pulls at 10% overall, but 90% of us like our congressperson, right? It's like you get these paradoxical kind of side effects of this. Anyway, the creation of this managerial class. And then basically the principle, so therefore when he says, he doesn't use this term, I don't think, but the result is basically the principal agent problem becomes dominant in everything, right? And so it doesn't matter how well-intentioned people are, whatever, it's like the principal agent thing, the principal agent problem is right. The people, the principal who owns something delegates, running it to somebody else. Those people have very different interests. And if your principals, your owners are dispersed and your managers are concentrated, then the managers are going to end up with all the power. And that's basically what happened. Let me pause there and we'll keep going on this thread.
Yeah, well,
All right,
one thing I want to follow up
see,
real quick on that thread is
seems to be in the
this
right
question of,
place, so
a decade ago, or compared to a time ago, you could have, Republicans bought takers too, so to speak, of, these elites who control these institutions catered to both sides. And they maybe had a bit more, political or intellectual diversity within them. But something happened where, first off, you can also be apolitical if there was a certain time, but politics kind of infested every area of life. And now it's less about catering to both sides and more about catering to one specific side. And so I'm curious, what changed there?
Yeah, so what Burnham would say two things. So the first, to build on managerialism, what Burnham would say basically is the manager.
What happened there? Mute it. Mic check 1 2. All right, the microphone seems to be working. All right, audio is out. What are we looking at? Oh, we muted.
How many owners of General Motors are there? There are millions of owners of General Motors because there are millions of people who own General Motors stock. How many managers are there at General Motors? There's, the top 10 executives that run the, there's the CEO, the top 10 executives, the top 200 managers in the company run the company. Like, who's more in charge of General Motors, right? The owners or the managers? And the answer is clearly the managers. By the way, same thing politically, right? Who runs the United States, right? Who runs the United States government? Is it the voters or is it, Congress and the White House? The voters are dispersed. There's, whatever, 300 million of us were dispersed. We individually, none of us have any control at all. And so, the handful of people who are our representatives basically, run everything. And, this leads to this, incredibly weird result where, Congress pulls at 10% overall, but 90% of us like our congressperson, right? It's like you get these paradoxical kind of side effects of this. Anyway, the Christian's managerial class. And then basically the principle, so therefore what he says, he doesn't use this term, I don't think, but the result is basically the principal agent problem becomes dominant in everything, right? And so it doesn't matter how well-intentioned people are, whatever, it's like the principal agent thing, the principal agent problem is right. The people, the principal who owns something delegates, running it to somebody else. Those people have very different interests. And if your principals, your owners are dispersed and your managers are concentrated, then the managers are going to end up with all the power. And that's basically what happened. Let me pause there and we'll keep going on this thread.
Yeah, well, one thing I want to follow up real quick on that thread is this question of, a decade ago, or compared to a time ago, you could have, Republicans bought takers too, so to speak, of these elites who control these institutions catered to both sides, and they maybe had a bit more political or intellectual diversity within them. But something happened where, first off, you can also be apolitical if there was a certain time, but politics kind of infested every area of life. And now it's less about catering to both sides and more about catering to one specific side. And so I'm curious, what changed there?
Yeah, so what Burnham would say two things. So the first, to build on managerialism, what Burnham would say basically is the managers get to the managers get to decide the politics of the company as they can.
Turbo.
Right, like, because the managers
idea.
have all the control, even though they don't own the company, because they have all the control, if they decide they want to take the company in one political direction and against another political direction, they can just do that. Because who's gonna stop them? Right? Principal agent problem. If you like poll all the owners, right, and said, do you want the company to do this? The owners would probably say, no, this is a bad idea, because to your point, like, we're gonna cut off half the market, right? We're gonna sell our sneakers as a result. The managers are like, I don't care. Like, why would the managers care? They don't care. The owners can't.
I don't care.
The owners are dispersed. And so basically the managers can get away with, essentially exploiting the positions they've been put in, for their own ideological political ends. And they can just get away with it. They can just do it. They can do it.
Turbo.
And then the company example of this is very interesting, because when you actually have, the problem is even worse than we've been describing, right? Because the problem is you have the principal agent problem playing out at the level of the management of the company.
Choices.
You have the exact same problem playing out at the level of the actual ownership of the company. In the sense of the big money management firms, particularly the big index funds.
It's a significantly different API.
BlackRock and competitors, right? And so what you have with like the Fortune 500 today, just structurally is you have, generally these sort of left-wing management teams, basically exploiting the principal agent probably to their benefit. And then you've got these little progressive investment firms that are aggregating up huge amounts of money from, billions of dispersed shareholders. And then, and it's actually really funny, right? Because it's like these index firms, their entire business is predicated on the idea that they do not have the confidence to take which companies invest in. And so therefore they're going to take your money as a future retiree, and they're going to invest it in the entire index companies. But yet somehow the managers at the index firm are so enlightened that they're completely qualified to re-engineer society. And to have a set of political views that may have nothing to do with your political views as an investor, but they are qualified to figure out how to re-engineer society. And this has led to ESG and all these other things. And so you've got basically these two actual classes of managers. You've got the corporate executives on the one hand, and you've got the professional investors on the other hand, who essentially have basically just taken power from their dispersed owners just because they can. That basically,
so
I think that basically just continues as long as it continues. Like, I don't know what stops that.
Maybe Elon stops that.
Okay. So then there's the Elon thing, right? So basically, okay, so what we've sort of described is sort of, again, back to Burnham, we've described sort of capitalism post 1940 or something like. Basically, what Burnham basically says is there are two kinds, what Burnham says in the book, there are two kinds of capitalism. Everybody thinks it's the same, they're not. There's two very different kinds. There's what he called bourgeois capitalism, which was the Henry Ford kind, which is the owner of the company runs the company. That's sort of the classic, right? And then there's managerial capitalism, which is this thing where the principal agent problem kicks in and managers run the company, even against the wishes of the owners. I view what we do in Silicon Valley with startups, with venture. By the way, same for private equity also, we can talk about. Basically, what venture capital and private equity are is they're sort of the return of bourgeois capitalism into an economic system that's almost entirely managerial. And the reason it makes sense to have like venture capital and startups in Burnham's framework to bring back some level of bourgeois capitalism, right? Is basically that managerial capitalism. It has its advantages. Like remember Burnham's point. Like it is necessary. Like you do need like highly trained, professional, technical, managers to run these giant enterprises.
That's
right? But it has its problems. We've identified one of the problems, which is this sort of political thing that happens. Another problem with managerial capitalism, I would argue, is it doesn't innovate very well. Right, and it doesn't innovate. The companies run by professional managers don't tend to innovate very well. Why don't they innovate very well? Well, the kinds of people who become professional managers are not innovators.
So actually,
because if they were, they wouldn't do that. They would be off inventing products and starting their own companies, right? And so basically, the way I think about it is venture capital and private equity are sort of the older model of capitalism, that first model of bourgeois capitalism, sort of coming back in the modern era. And sort of harvesting this arbitrage opportunity that's created by the fact that managerial companies can no longer invent new things. And so, we do that. We do that every day. You've done that in your career.
Doesn't work.
What our companies all have in common. Basically, there's somebody. There's a person or a very small founding team of people who own. On day one, 100% of the business, but even after they get it fully financed, they still belong to the business. They often actually have voting control of the business, and they have direct. Again, they have bundled accountability, responsibility, authority in the old model. Like if you brought Henry Ford back, if you were able to teleport Henry Ford into our era, he would look at a modern high-tech startup and he would say, that's just like Ford Motor Company was when I ran it. Like, that's the model. And then he would look at modern, Ford Motor Company and say, holy Lord, like, I can't believe what happened, right? Like, Ford Motor Company may be a very well-run managerial company, but it's not run anywhere close to how Henry Ford would have run it. But anyway, yeah, so that takes us to Elon. Of course, what Elon is he is the fully realized, Henry Ford, Howard Hughes, right? One of these kind of, peak bourgeois capitalists. He is, he is the best, kind of example of the bourgeois capitalism model that we've had in our, society for I think decades. And he's just, and you see it playing out with Twitter. It's just like, I own it, right? It's like, I bought the entire company. I own it. I am completely in charge. I am going to completely harvest the payoff, right, from my success if I make it work. And I'm going to lose all the money of my own money if it doesn't work. I am attaching my money to it. I'm attaching my reputation to it, right? Like, I'm putting my time into it. Like, I'm not delegating. Like, there's no professional class of managers at Twitter. Like, he's running the company himself, right? And so it's bringing back this old model. It's bringing back into a world in which the companies he's competing with and many other companies like generally just like don't run like that anymore. So yeah, I think it's great. Like, I think we should bring back as much capitalism as we can. Now, Vernon would argue, fine, Mark, that's great, but you're just going to recreate the problem, right? Which is because you're going to break all these companies. They're going to be run by the founders for a while, and then at some point, guess what? They're going to get maybe complicated, and the professional managers are going to take over, and you're going to just recreate the problem. Like, okay, my answer would be okay, fine, but like that's a problem for 20 years from now.
Better than we have now.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do what we can for now.
I see Elon running a few experiments. More experiments in the past few weeks have been started than maybe in the past few years. Some of them include Elon showing that you, as a company owner, you don't have to be kind of bullied or pressured by sort of activists within your company. You can actually fight back and maybe win. And that is showing a model to CEOs of what's possible. I think he's presenting a model of you don't have to be externally bullied either. I think we had an era in tech, you could with companies like Uber or other companies that kind of didn't necessarily apologize, or I guess they did apologize and kind of conceded the moral high ground, whereas Elon is fighting back and on moral terms, actually saying, no, we are more pure than the people who are attacking us and winning to some extent. I also think he's presenting a model of institutional reform, whereas there's been this idea that these institutions that have been captured, you can't reform them. You just have to start new ones. And maybe the situation is so bad, actually, that if you fight, you kind of empower the winners anyways, and you have to just wait until it's a better time to push back. And Elon's not waiting, obviously. And so we're going to learn so much from these experiments.
Yeah, so I won't talk too much about Twitter specifically because we're involved in it, and I shouldn't. But yeah, no, I think, look, he is doing all that. And by the way, he's done all that in 45 days.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and again, this is the thing. I mean, I don't think you ever, probably have these, it's like the parlor game thing, which is like, what would you do if you owned company X, right? And it's always this like hypothetical kind of, parlor game thing. It's always from a question I always ask because I'm trying to get to like, what substantively is the right thing to be done? In Elon's case, he's just like, screw it. I am literally actually going to own it, right? And then I'm actually going to do all those things. So, and look, there's a lot. I say this. Every other CEO who's at least conscious in the industry is looking at.
So
it's watching Elon very carefully right now. I just got an investor relations readout from a company that I won't name, but it's simply bringing up just a readout of feedback from their investors. It's a public company, and so it's feedback from their investors. And there's a section in the readout. It's just a reflection of what their investors are saying to them. It's a section of the readout called the Elon effect. Right, right, and it's exactly what you think. Is it's like, okay, this guy seems to be able to run this company on like 20% of the headcount, right? And so basically, what are you going to do, right? And again, the significance here is, that data is a little bit stale now. So that was probably 30 days in that they had those meetings where somebody said, the Elon effect. And so the shareholders are all watching. And so, yeah, a lot of people are watching. I think honestly, I mean, at least in private conversations, a lot of both CEOs and investors I talk to, are very, much hoping that everything plays out great because they're hoping that he's presenting it to companies. Yeah, and again, what Bernie would say is, yeah, you have, congratulations, you have rediscovered the virtues of bourgeois capitalism. Like, yes, this is how things used to work. This is a way that it can be done. It does rely on having somebody actually having that level of power, right? Who is in that level of control. If he was having, he has, and look, he's, dealing with all the different constituents he's dealing with, but like, at least he's not dealing with like public, he's not everything black crap. Yeah. Right. Like, there's a whole set of people he normally would have to deal with. The CEOs normally have to deal with, who he just doesn't have to deal with because he literally owns the company. And so, look, maybe it's a model. Like maybe if this works, the way that he clearly intends it to work.
That's even a function I wrote.
Maybe a lot more people
weird that I
literally do what he's doing, which is, to your point, they buy these companies and reboot them and kind of reform them. And that would be a big change.
Same place.
And then maybe just on the margin, maybe this changes how public companies are run. Right? Maybe this is a little bit of the reinvention. It's a little bit of the rediscovery of this. We bring back some of the spirit of bourgeois capitalism, also retaining some of the advantages of managerialism. Aspirationally, you could say maybe that's a possibility.
Nowhere.
Well, it's interesting. I remember Stripe laid off like 13% of its workforce. Stripe is a credible company, of course, and then a number of companies followed suit with kind of exactly the same amount of the workforce. So it's just, you need one example, and then another
13% is not correct. That's right. Just the general trend. Yeah. So the third, it's always this funny thing. It's like 13%. Why is 13%? Well, because it feels like it should be at least 10%. Well, like, boy, 50% sounds painful. But we do want to show that we're serious. And we want to meet in the middle. And so it's probably going to be either 12 or 13%. All right. So this 12% might sound a little weak. So let's do 13%. Exactly. So whereas, Elon's like, 80%. Yeah.
Right. So
like the difference in magnitude between 13, I mean, you know this, but like 13% to 80%, like there's a spread.
Yes. I know it all too well, unfortunately. And moving away from Twitter, but still on Elon for a second, because he also presents a new model for how to be a billionaire. A common question we'll get is over the past decade, during some of the most excesses of what's been going on, people say, where have the billionaires been? Why haven't they stepped up to stop it? And as it turns out, maybe some of them have been implicitly or explicitly supporting it. And it feels like there's this kind of monoculture for how billionaires are supposed to act. And the views they're supposed to have, and the work they're supposed to do, and the way their organizations are supposed to set up and what they're supposed to do. These are your peer set. Talk a little bit, even in the abstract, about kind of the pressures that face this class, and why Elon or maybe something like Thiel is just so different from how this group all act. Why isn't there more diversity among this class?
Yeah, so this goes to Burnham's third book. So we'll go to the third book, which is the Machiavellian, which is probably the most important book. So, the Machiavellians is a book all about it's about the structure of policy. So it's not.
These are the candidates. Probably would be really nice if I provided like some completion framework to allow myself
to discussion about this. But the sort of one of the key concepts that sort of pops right out of the Machiavellians is this sort of concept of oligarchy.
To the sections.
Right, and just to give a quick thumbnail sketch. Basically what Burnham and his predecessors, the Machiavellians, he talks about a lot of prior political thinkers, and including Machiavelli, but a bunch of others. It basically says, look, there are fundamentally three forms of power. There are three forms of sort of political power.
So
there's rule of one.
We're gonna comment it out.
And then there's rule of the
Not
many.
interested in this.
And then what Machiavelli said actually is there's a good and a bad version of both of those. And so the good version, in Machiavelli's formulation, the good form of the rule of one, the good form is monarchy, the bad form is tyranny. For rule of the few, the good form is aristocracy, the bad form is oligarchy. And then for rule of many, the good form is democracy, and the bad form is anarchy.
Shorthand for devising the
general
text.
framework. And historically, if you read like Machiavelli, historically, political systems basically go through this rotation. They actually rotate through the six, and then they go back to the beginning. So they start out with monarchies, the king goes bad, that becomes a tyranny, the king is overthrown by the aristocracy. The aristocracy basically goes to seed because the oligarchy, the people ultimately decide they hate the oligarchy, they take over, they insert democracy doesn't work, people can't rule, it's dispersed, that turns into anarchy, and then therefore that's where you get a king. And so there's this sort of theory and sort of this timeless cycle of politics that plays out. if you kind of read this book,
And then I
you
could
seriously
probably
then
do
you kind
some
of say,
padding
what
on
is
what
our
comes
political
back.
system? Like, what political system do we live under? And so you can
And
kind
we
of run a
do
process of elimination. You can kind of say, well,
completion
clearly not rule of
of
one,
whatever
maybe
the hell
more, it's
that
like
is
number of
going to
kings,
be.
right? So it's not monarchy or tyranny. You know, hopefully it's not
And then
anarchy,
let's
so that
see
sort of,
if
you know, brings
this
it down to
fails.
sort of aristocracy, oligarchy, or democracy. And then
Selected.
what you want to say,
Auto
right, is that it's oligarchy, it's democracy, right? We call that training
what
from
this
childhood
does.
states. Democracy, but of course, you know, is technically not
And
democracy.
that
because it's
means
represented
that
democracy,
we
which is not
should
the same thing as
get
democracy.
some
Right,
feedback.
so we're not like voting on every single issue. We're electing, you know, 435 Congress people and 100 senators and so forth, and a single
Also,
president
can
figure
I
that stuff out for
see
us. But representative
tokens
democracy,
on
so
burning?
it's basically rule of the few. And then and if it's rule of the few, it's an aristocracy or oligarchy. And I think the short answer to that is it was
Hardly any
aristocracy.
tokens,
basically
doesn't
through
cost
about the
jack
1960s.
squat.
And you know, that was sort of
Nada.
the heyday of the WASP aristocracy, and
Nada,
then these sort of
people.
super elite, assimilated, you know, Catholic aristocrats, Jewish
There we go.
aristocrats, you know, kind of with the sort of dominant Protestant aristocratic class
Here
at the
it
time.
goes.
They kind of ran the country.
Good.
I mean, you know, FDR himself was like a
That is funny. We actually got
like a
coded
peak
back,
aristocrat,
but
you know,
it
kind
did
of this
not.
era. And then
really
basically since the 1960s, you know, basically the aristocracy basically, for a variety of reasons, either, you know, had power taken from it or just decided to give up power. And then,
Region with
then our
context
modern
and
political
dot.
form
Holy shit!
is
It just tries to.
And then there's this big difference between aristocracy and oligarchy.
We probably should
Aristocracy
be
consists of
doing
what Machiavelli called lions,
next
which are people who
step.
basically rule through basically
JSON
force
code data
and
and look at
basically assertion of command.
So
Master
I'll copy
credit.
it right here.
What's that?
Master
Yeah,
morale.
look, Master Morale, yeah, well, it's a classical aristocratic rule. It's why am I in charge? Because I'm in charge. Like, I'm the aristocrat, I'm from the right family, I own the land, screw you, like, do what I tell you. Do tell you what he calls the lion. And then the oligarchy, right, exactly. So the aristocrat sort of representing the left interest of national morality.
Payload.
The oligarch, who competes with the aristocrat, basically
It's probably
says,
gonna
oh,
be
actually,
really
I'm ruling
nice
on
and
behalf of
hard
people.
to look at.
So he's what
Jason
Machiavelli calls
pretty
foxes.
print.
And basically the foxes rule through deceit, manipulation, and cunning. And their form of deceit,
Jason
manipulation, and cunning is to claim that they are acting on behalf of the people when of course they're actually acting.
So
on
we're
behalf
gonna have to
themselves.
look it up. Maybe we just look at data. Maybe this didn't matter.
And so anyway, Burnham and Machiavelli and Cicero and all these guys, Aristotle would say we're living in a classic oligarchy. Like that's the actual structure that we're in.
Post that.
And so basically our ruling class is an oligarchy. It's an oligarchy.
The headers we never
elite
print.
here is a term, you know, of this book as well.
Right.
And then basically, so anyway, long-winded way of getting to your question, which is, okay, what happens to a high-tech founder, right? Regardless of background, maybe they come from another country, maybe they come from here, maybe they come from the West. And they start a tech company and it works and they become successful and they become rich, right? And they become like high status all of a sudden. What happens? And the question of what happens is they get invited into the oligarchy. Right, and literally what happens is you start getting invitations, right? And so you get invited to Davos, and you get invited to Aspen, and you get invited to, Nantucket, and you get invited to, and before you know it, you are spending your time with, and by the way, you show up, right, to these things, you show up to the Aspen the first time or whatever, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I've arrived.
There's
right?
Prince Harry.
Yeah, there's Prince Harry, and there's, Mike Bloomberg, and there's, all these, like, there's all these, and there, movie stars, and, like, TV stars, and politicians, and, there's Cory Booker, and there's Kamala Harris, and, like, it's like, wow, like, I am in the in crowd, right? And you're invited in, and by the way, they're as nice as can be, like, they're incredibly sweet, they're incredibly nice, they're so happy to see you, it's so great to have you there. And dinners are great and the parties are great and it's all just so fantastic. And then at some point they're like, well, we have this project that we're raising funding for. And you're like, oh, wow, I would love to support your, whatever school, and then all of a sudden you find yourself writing the checks. And then it's like, well, actually I'm running for president next year. And you're like, wow, you're my friend. I'd love to support you. Like, this is all great. And so so what is it? It's like it's a social circle. Right, it's a political network, it's a patronage network, it's a fundraising network, it's a PR campaign. It's all of those things. It's the power, it's the governance structure. These are the people who staff the senior positions in like all the big important institutions in the country. University presidents and people who run media companies and editors of newspapers. And, so they say the bold-faced names, like the people who are, when they're written about the newspaper, their name is bold because everybody knows who they are. And it's just like, wow, I'm like in, right?
Hey,
and,
what's good,
if you're
Hassan?
not like paying attention to it, what you realize is,
Happy to
it's
see
not,
you.
you're not not getting in that
casually
group,
lisping
you're not getting
away,
some broad representation.
making
of
my
the
little
life. What you're
assistant
getting
and my
is basically this,
little
like,
chat,
this
my
abstracted
GPT enabled assistant and
oligarchy
my
class.
editor work a bit
Where
better
it
than
actually turns
than
out
it
like their
originally
politics are
did.
just identical. Like they all believe exactly the
Let's
same
explain
thing. They have arguments about
what
anything.
this
It's all
does.
and primarily it's an influence operation. It's there's a lot of what's
And
called
really good seeing you.
And by the way, it's distributed. Like there's no central node. There's nobody in charge.
It's a very chaotic setting here. I'm
There's no
listening
secret
to
bosses or
Mark and Grayson talk about us living in an oligarchy, not democracy, while trying to write code. Because the missus was over with some folks and they were having private conversations. So I just needed to drown out all the noise. Now they're mostly gone, so I'm back to quiet coding. Let's see if I can figure out what just happened. There were no errors. I thought there was a printout. Must have missed it. Double check. I write the result of this. Maybe not super interesting. This is the one I want now. That's going to be more interesting. Then I'll just look at them, and that's all I'm going to be doing for now, right? So select the region, explain what this does. Yep, void variable dot, and obviously completely overlooked this. Device under test would be, I'm passing this along, that's the region, that's this variable here. Other than that, it's looking good. What are you working on, Hassan? What keeps you busy today? All right, so we're going to call my pair proc buddy, say, explain this. All right, void function instruction. What the hell am I thinking? What the hell am I thinking? I'm clearly not defining these correctly. What am I missing here? Hang on. Filled with void function, right? So toggle debug an error. Okay, toggle it, turn it on. All right, so I'm selecting this. Void function. How the hell? So, okay, so this actually passes through. Huh. Because right now we're in the let block, and now we're actually in the prog block. Okay, region is selected, if active region. Okay, so we're just walking up second, the let assignment. That here is where I run into trouble, where I call as a senior programmer explain. So I pass along this as text. This part still works. And we end up here. Okay, but this is kind of like confusing. I end up here. We started off with the intention of making this a command. That's why these were masked. So now they're unmasked, which means this call should at least end up there. All right, so I need to evaluate this function, re-eval that, close the error block, select again. Come on. GPT, explain. Oh, all right, so something happened. I can't for the life of me figure out. Okay, so there is a request in execution. Something went wrong. Void variable request result new. Okay, so this happened at a very different level. Message, here it goes. That's here. But this fail. And this is why it fails. My termination is fucked. So this needs to be in there along with that. If block here terminates there. This is the else case. I'm fiddling around with parens, kind of like lose the thread, right? So that was just sloppy. Pair All right. I'm probably gonna get a bunch of data that I don't understand, and then I have to go cherry pick it and to see what the interesting bits are. Here we go. Payload. Procedure programmer explain. What did we get? That's the payload. We didn't execute the call, did we? All right. So fair enough. Fair enough. So I printed out payload. I printed out target, and then here goes is nil. Result new doesn't return anything. It also doesn't fail. Go figure what the hell is going on. Oh, snap. Okay. We complete this, populated that result, whatever the hell it is, and that didn't quite play ball nicely. It's so weird. What am I missing? Oh, 6. Okay, let's figure out how to get a sense of what it does on error. That's a good one actually. Request. All right, so here see response. Request response object, error thrown. Function called an error. Is there anything in particular we need to keep in mind? Or the error function? Not too clear. Read through the whole thing. Parser function, then there's a sync thing. Okay, up there. Keyword hard. There's some other documentation on this. Callback functions. Okay, what we can do is just provide some really lazy implementation, key data allowed, or keys, I don't know what it does. So I'm just going to drop it in there. Also, I'm just going to drop this, and I don't know, I could probably, let me see what the actual syntax for Labdas is. Lisp, starting to get dark. So that's what it looks like. So I'm just gonna put something there. And then I'll just message error, and then just hope that this is something we can actually represent. And I'll just put this on a single line. Easier to read. Where are we? All right, this is probably going to be like a royal syntax fuck up. But this is just what it is, right? This is what it is. So, this is my own shitty function. This is the new one. Let's see. Here. Explain. Right. Just waiting for errors. I'm also switching other screens to dark mode. All right. 4 folks checking in. This is really cool. All right, tell me what you're working on. I'm really curious. Seeing you struggling with some E-Lisp, I'd love to hear what you're struggling with or succeeding in. All right. So it's almost certain that we're hitting the API. But I am doing something remarkably wrong. Maybe the cheat code is in looking in like the aid. Let me look at the original code base. I have a version checked out. Side by side. All right, so M's. All right, so as far as I can tell, let's just open underneath. All right, so okay, that's just mail stuff. So the endpoint here, that seems fine. Payload model messages role. Then role browser content. This whole, what's it gonna be? And that's right. Okay, so back to that screen. So right. How do you debug API calls? Well, you can't. You can't. You just have to figure out how to make correct calls. One thing we can do, that's one thing we can do, actually. This is a helpful one. I can just run the ina kill, and I would take data and JSON encoded, right? And I don't care so much about the result. I'm pretty sure it's going to be nil. Then we can at least start dissecting what that request of ours looks like. So JSON formatter, paste it inside this. This is the official JSON formatter. Is it? Oh, this is not. This is such a fucking annoying page. No. Oh. All right. What do we have here? System. Okay. Role. So the thing is, I actually didn't see an example. I just assumed that role user content something, that's the way to do it. Role user content something. Maybe that's my mistake. Also, I did get a response, did I? I don't know what the hell I'm looking at. But anyways, let's do compare and contrast. Like I have gpt-3.5-turbo that looks legit. And we have messages, looks legit. Then it's a list, looks legit. Full user content something. Okay, so you know what? We're just gonna make it simple now. We're just gonna make it real simple. We're just gonna drop out this thing. That was an assumption from my end that this would probably work. It's unclear. So we keep that out of the loop. Then actually we'll just provide it as a, I don't know, like under roles. Can I use a unique identifier representing it, which can help OpenAI to monitor and detect abuse? Okay. Role user. All right, so this could have been something else, but I still decide. Messages required, temperature, none of this is required. But how about we take a page from that other book, right? we had this OpenAI complete. So this thing here, model, we probably don't want it. Top P might be interesting. Which one are we passing along? Top P. Well, actually, max tokens is relevant, so that in there. It's actually outside of that, huh? Max tokens, that's relevant. What else do we need? Top P. Right, so and figure out how we break things. Here we go. It's super pathetic. The way I'm breaking this, it's just embarrassing. Right, so this thing is kind of like back. Single message. We're doing 2 messages this time. Calling them both user. Let's look at system. Nothing on how to set up system messages. I'm not sure at all that this is broken. So what do we do here? Sync T, study this request. Wait until the request is done. Okay. Maybe I should wait. Block. Success, love the result, a list get. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. We're just going to, let's just do a block here. And here we get key data. And then okay, so I'm just going to messages dot. It's probably going to be far from parsable, but we gotta try something. Cool. So we eval that, and then GPT pick up here. That's my mistake. Here, explain this, please. All right, and then I'm gonna run. I'm pretty hungry. And I have to get back to some serious work again, but hey, what happened here? Last messages, payload, target. All right, so we never got there. Okay, good. Okay, yes, data void function. Oh, come on. Come on. Yeah, we're just gonna have to rerun this. Here. Where did the min-max thing get printed? That's just the buffer characteristics. Oh, okay, cool. So this is, see, the response from ChatGPT. All right. The function is called Debian, right? It makes 2 arguments for that. Overall, this function is a cool method of generating responses based on given instructions. Okay, so this is the explanation for this little thing I'm writing right now. So what is it's kind of like the mode in which I expect to use it, because as you can tell, here goes is nil. So this bit here, let's get choices data. That failed. Well, failed because the answers were not. Yeah, oh, it wasn't choices. Go figure. So what? Okay, no, that's the problem. Data, choices. And then in there, we pick text, but inside of choices, we have messages with role and content. And that was different from the last time when we picked them up from just the completions endpoint. We just went into choices and picked text. But now inside of choices, we'll just have to pick message content. All right. Question here would be, let's get choices data. Okay. And then, I don't know, here, choices data, or 0. What the hell is this? Return the element of sequence at index. Okay, this is not what I want. Boom. All right. So this is where we populate completions. All right. Actually, completion. I have a note on this somewhere, so let's go to my notes. And then completions. Do we have anything? Nothing on completions. Oh, nothing on completions. So we're going to have to learn that. I was almost certain we had a section on completions. But here we find out. Things you don't know. Complete. Probably not it. Okay. Up to present completion. Oh yeah, of course. Can't do it here. I have to look up keys. Completion. Nah. Nope, don't want to see that. This one. Completion and mini buffer, reading file names, completion variables, program completion ordinary buffers, basic completion functions. So try completing string. This function returns the longest common substring of all possible completions of string in collection. Huh. All right. Let's try this out. Try completion. Or FOBA. FOBA. We're watching The Office, so. Nah, that's not cool. It's not interactive. I want to have like all completions, some returns the list of all possible. No, give me like something that completion of mini buffer. Completing read prompt. Okay. This function is a string in the mini buffer, assisting user by providing completion. Completing read. I think that's the standard facility. So here we go. All right, cool. What happens if you select one? Nothing. Well, we could figure that out. Food. These are the options. Blah. Reasoning in the middle for completion, blah, blah. And this is, so the first one is the prompt, the second one is the collection, then the predicate. Predicate is empty, require match, yes. Actually, no for us. And then initial input, history, def, inherit input method. Okay, so what do we do once there is a match? Nothing. That's on. It's that same argument that's completing, right? Okay, so this is not sufficiently helpful. String mini buffer with completion prompt is a string to prompt it. Normally, the answer colon in space collection can be a list of strings, an alias, and orbital. Okay. But there's a try completion, all completion, test completion, boundaries, blah, 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 basic completion for details about completion, input of program completion for expectation of collection require match. If function returns a non-null value, the mini buffer is exited with that argument as the value. Anything else behaves like T. Ah, okay, cool. So this could be require match could be a function called with the input as the argument. All right. Okay, so let's just pass a function. So require match. So our completion would be like this. Completing read. Best one. That's our evil. Yeah. And then this is where the list happens. And nil would be predicate. There's no predicate. And then require match would be a lambda that is message. So it's X. Initial input, nothing. So we pick your left, let's leave. All right. Actually, quite curious to see if the messages buffer we did anything. We didn't. So we have to turn. Interesting. We never got here. Okay, because there weren't any options for completion. So if I say 12, actually, okay, that didn't work. I have to populate Apple. Come on. Did I misunderstand what's happening here? Positions. So I have like prompt and collection, and then I have predicate nil and require match. If the function returns a non-nil value, the buffer is exited with that argument as a value. Anything else behaves as it? Okay. Which will be called with the input. All right. Not clear what the hell this is. Something kind of like works. Anyways, what we're going to do, we're just going to do the lazy thing. We're going to do we have text here. In the GPT case, there's no text, which is the message, right? And then is correct. A list. What was it? Content. Role. Actually, let's do this. Okay, let's get message. So I'm going to say was it choices? Yeah, choice. Let's say top choice. Yeah. And then end it. And this goes in there. I don't even know if lexical binding will fuck me up. find out. And that's a function. And top choice. Got from the top choice. Double check that the A list access thing here was okay. A list get on data, we pick choices out of data. Then we pick the first element of that. Then we look. Now that's the top choice actually. So maybe we should just pop that here. That now we have the top choice there, and we drop this there. Pitch the top choice nicely in the middle. All right, so now we can get content. And what we can do right inside of this thing is check what that block is. And I try to say message. This is what we got twice, right? And there we go. It's not necessary. All right, time for dinner, people. Time for dinner. A list. This is not message, but user. Let's see what ChatGPT came up with. Oh, actually. And we just say peer prompt, explain this, please. And we have to explain this, please. And I believe I am printing it out somewhere. Yep. Let's get thrifty. That's there. Payload, target. I'm gonna see where this thing starts. Here goes. That one. No. Okay, so there's no name. I didn't even get this thing correctly. How did I botch this comment? Gotcha. Okay. All right, so this larger structure here, I did unpack. So that was this one. I look at it again, top choice, that's top thing there, yeah. And then what I intended to do, pick up the result, which would be, weirdly, top choice. A-list top choice role, and then top choice content. Why does it not work? Let's debug this. A-list. So if I give myself role user and then something like this, content, blah, blah, right? Just curious to see if this evaluates. Valid function, fair enough. This is the payload. A-list get user, but this is not really what I want. So A-list get, what am I missing here? I have data, I get choices from data. Is that comparable? Yeah. Data, I get choices from data. I pick the 0th element of that. Then I take text. How does it not work? Huh? I'm missing A-list get. resolve. Ah, it's annoying, right? Stupid me. Hey, let's look at this thing here. So if foo looks like that, kind of like coincides with the structure that I have here. Let's change the type. When I say hey, let's get a foo. What the fuck? We set it to 1. Oh crap. Oh crap. This is just shitty reading. Okay, so this is one thing I need to really be careful. Find the first element of a list whose car equals key and return its scooter. And I believe that first element whose car equals key and return scooter user. Okay, so this didn't work. I just didn't read correctly. See, I'm done. I've been writing since 7, and I'm clearly not functioning anymore. But moral of the story is that this thing actually more or less does the job. And then if I look at the structure of that thing that we have there, and I can include the top choice, that's not the thing that we're printing. It's weirdly seem to contain the field. Nah, I don't know if we should be trying that. I don't know if we should be trying that. We read the JSON. Okay. If it's not text, I got choices. So if it's not text, choices thing still holds. That part is sweet. That works. Then once we have the first of all choices, then we have this structure in which we grab message. Okay. So, okay. And inside message. Ah, oh, God, come on. Top choice. That's, yeah. Then we get the result. That's content, a get message, blah, blah, blah. But we shouldn't have done that. We should actually have done the other thing around, a list get content. Yeah, that's what we should have done. And then here, we no longer have to worry about actually message. So get message from that. And then at this level, we can just get content. Good. And then here I can get role and content. Oh, this is so annoying. We call it top choice message. And then the A-list get message already, so we're just going to say top choice message. And do the same here. This seems to be legitimate. Explain why this works. And it could be factored for readability. The next thing I'll do is I mean, like once I get the messages in, okay, here we go. And then reflective version we have. Right, fair enough. It gives me an answer. I can come up with that. I can fox with that. And then let's just double check that here goes doesn't come up empty. There we go. Just go. Bam, bam, bam. All right. So what I'm going to do here, I don't need to deal with that. I'm just going to take result new. Boom. All right. So here are my little helpers. I don't need to provide advice around the old one. I'll keep it as is. Now I just have a new function that I can commit into maybe aid later. For now, still using the text Da Vinci 3. Now I understand this a little bit better, so it's not bad. What would be really nice though is to take the different choices that we get back, if there are multiple options we get back, and basically present the complete and read interface, like a list at the bottom, where you can kind of like pick your favorite. But anyways, that's cool. That's cool. This works for me. Another thing that I can do maybe. That's an interesting one. How about this? What we had top choice. So let's just do this, right? There. Actually, we could probably already do that. Just to look for the last yes I got. There we go. Ooh, too much data. Actually, can we decipher this? Yeah, okay, let's get this. Actually, it's just check completion model, usage completion tokens, total tokens, choices. I'm pretty sure it's just a single entry. Finish rate and stuff, okay? Just a single entry. And I have to say though, that this thing is considerably more verbose. Yeah. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We're just gonna commit this. Get a bunch of bullshitting around, but enough is enough. Now this thing I don't need. That was just dropping some helpers in my yank funk. Let's see. Okay, here's the stuff. I named this, so yeah, max tokens is set to 1,000. I'm going to commit that. Hey, I'm still streaming.
You want to call it now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, do you want to ask them what time fits for that?
Yeah, I'll do that when I'm done with the stream.
How long till the end of the stream?
I'm pretty hungry, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up now. See you in a bit.
We're gonna eat bagels?
Yeah, you wanna do that? I'll be right with you. Or set max tokens to 1,000. I don't need that many tokens back. Typically, I don't want long answers. I want short and sweet. Right, there we go. The sync job is running. All right, this entire block here. Oh, I don't think it's reading this. But here we go. This thing here, pure prog. Actually, we're just going to post this first. And we're just going to say like, holy smokes, what is this? Okay, just this one, huh? Yeah, and that means that I do have to tangle it into that file, but one thing at a time. I'm first going to commit just actually, let me tangle it. So generating code for my config. So now that. So the Emacs part, the org file, that's not so interesting. I need to find where inside of my L files this little thing is being written. Doesn't look like it's actually being written into the L files, which begs the question if maybe I've commented out some of this. Yeah, it's actually not being tangled, which is fine then. Like, let's just keep it out. Let's not. Let's just start using this. It's shitty, but it kind of like works. Check this down here. I do copy the result. So it ends up in my buffer the moment this thing is done, right? I should also ask whether, so I think this is just too much here. Just clean things up a bit. I think having a message function here is a bit more appropriate. Is it? No, let's not overcomplicate it. This thing worked. We're gonna stick with it. Shut the hell up and just stick with it, right? Gotta be disciplined when it comes to this. So here we go. So we had this already staged. Good. I made some changes, so let's go spot them. And where are you? Where are you? Where are you? I'm not going to angle that part, but I will record this bit, right? And this part is junk. I'll probably also log that one to yank the answer. Okay, cool. We do that. And then I feel like this thing here, that was just debug junk. All right, cool. Okay. So we go to here, and I'm gonna write a commit message, which we should also be able to do now. And here, compose a commit message for the listed changes. Probably gonna be private message. Refactor OpenAI completion function to include chat functionality in a new phone. Oh, not too bad, is it? Not too bad, huh? Feet. Oh, clearly that didn't work. Copy function is out of whack. The kill I have to fix. All right, refactor. What was it again? Actually, just steal it from here. There we go. Refactor 8 completion. Refactor 8 completion. Actually, we just stubbed an 8 completion, an 8 function. Stub 8 function to chat GPT plus and programming and stub 8 function. Okay, then we just say chat GPT function and and programming helper. That's enough. And then we make the fix because this result new thing that came back from here that was clearly an abomination. Oh, so system, it did come back a decent answer. There is okay, cool. Okay, so the here goes. Where's the here goes? So much noisiness in there. Here goes. Okay, so that isn't there anymore. Okay, here. Cool. So I eval that again. I eval this. Maybe I commit this one into the aid project. Yeah, okay, cool. I think it's enough. Sometimes you got something done and then you just have to call it quits real quick. Last thing I want to do is check what was it? Something aid. Right now. See any recent pull requests to the project. None. All right. That's kind of like cool. Shouldn't I have a function that doesn't just insert, but inserts, finds the range of the inserted content and then highlights? Yeah, so. Oh, and then I still want to use that prompt template. Oh, there's plenty to do. Fun tinker activities. Oh, I did something with threading here. Not like threading in terms of like stuff, but more like taking some information and pulling it through, threading it through all functions. Okay, cool. This is fun stuff. I'm just gonna have to add chat GPT helper to aid, which fetch origin. I don't know. I don't understand what the difference is. This is so weird. Ah, it's a formatting diff. Oh, fine. Look at that. Whatever, I don't care about this. I thought I had established. Let's just look at what the origins are. Oh, this is the problem. Fair enough. That's the problem. Okay, so I will have to merge back from this project. Cool. Which we can do. We can certainly do that. But what probably is easier is to add another upstream. Add, call it OG. That's not the name. GT. Oh, is that actually the repo name? 8L. Okay, wrong base. 8.L. Default. No, it's not my push default, but here we go. Bunch of stuff. Receive secrets, and then merge that in. Enable prompting of entire buffer. I like that. Oh, that's an old one. Correct function names. There's a bunch of shit coming in. You know what? I'm going to take a chance. Version master. So let's just check on here. Create a new branch. Starting here. Call it checkpoint 1. All right, cool. And then check out. Start LG master. Information branch be stop chat GPT. Stop chat GPT func. All right. Now I'll have to figure out indicate straight freeze. Oh yeah, this is gonna be painful. So I probably should tangle this line. So this line is going to be tangled. My little pair proc helper is going to be in here. Programming. It uses aid under the and then we take all of that and let all right, cool. So let's see what's the diff. What's the diff, my people? This thing, nope. This thing, nope. This thing, nope. Don't want to look at that. Don't want to look at this. And do want to look at this. This is good. That is good. This is just some formatting stuff. We're gonna take it, right? And then that prompt templating stuff, I have to figure my shit out. Everything else, we ignore for now. The work file we're done with. Then we have the Lang example file. Well, we want to update everything on the 8 side, yeah. Not the lglot stuff. For the eglot stuff, we keep that for another time. It's isolated. Cool. For track 8 first. For 8 and stuff. Chat GPT. And I believe we're done then. Peace. That's it. It's a good show. All right, y'all take care. I'm gonna get some dinner and then maybe be back for some late night coding. Maybe only after watching a little bit The Office with the missus. Been a long day. Y'all take care. Be kind to each other. Ciao.